Somebody, let me tell you, I'm not mentioning names. Someone came and told me that something changes when the camera comes on. So.
By the way, guys, somebody has accused Soila of a few things.
Don't say.
No, let me say. I won't say who.
Yeah, I don't say my accusations. We have to go to court first before we can share it.
Actually, that person who accused Soila will be part of a future video. We'll do a final video on soul ties, and that person who accused Soila of something will be very much there, and he shall get the chance to present his case
Not even
on that video. That video will be a court session, right?
Yeah, it's a court session. Moving on swiftly, guys. Karibuni sana to this third video of soul ties. This time around, the topic is patterns and bridges. And so soul ties / pattern and bridges. There are certain patterns that you see in your life, in your identity, in your actions, in your relationships that are informed by some soul ties that you have. So that's what you want to expound on and talk about. And yeah.
So somebody mentioned that they don't believe in soul ties because it's a religious concept, and it's only religious people who believe in them. So them, since they are not religious, they don't believe. I have a friend who is he did theology and he did psychology at the same time. And we usually have this kind of conversations with him. And one of the things he told me is that when you look at how psychologists describe soul ties and how the religious side describes soul ties, they are talking about the same thing. It's just that the terminologies and the wordings they use are different. But when you look at how they describe certain things and you look at how the religious describe certain things, you can tell these guys are talking about the same thing. So soul ties are not just a religious concept. It's something that clinical psychology has also been able to verify. So the reason I'm raising this up is because I don't want you to throw away the bathwater together with the baby just because you have a bias, or you have you have this thing against religious people and religious mindset and everything. So if you are not religious, it's fine. But don't throw away the possibility of knowing something just because you have a bias towards or against something else. Patterns and bridges. Now the soul tie is a bridge. Please picture the picture of a bridge. Let me put this bridge here. Just allow me to cover your face there a bit. If you look at this bridge, there's the bridge, the thing that people walk on, and then there are pillars. There are pillars that are supporting the bridge. And then there's the terminal and the beginning of the bridge, which means the bridge is starting from here, point A, going all the way to point B. And then between point A and point B, there are pillars that are supporting the bridge from below. Now, soul ties are like bridges. Now, the things that bridges do is that bridges don't just ferry things from one side to the other. They also ferry things from this side to the other side. In other words, it's a multi-directional transmission point. Things come from this side to this side and this side to this side. And that's what a soul tie basically is. That's how soul ties, yes, a two-way traffic. I'm using too many words. Thank you for simplifying.
Yeah, I need that one.
A soul tie is a two-way traffic. And the thing about soul ties is that the moment you formed a soul tie, it begins to operate whether you cognitively recognize it or not. That the moment it's formed, it's always transmitting.
It's part of your life.
So I can be in America and I'm in Kenya, and our soul ties are still affecting how we are doing things and how we respond to life situations. So that's first thing you need to understand about soul ties. Once it's formed, it's always in transmission. Now there's a small illustration that I want to do here. Probably it will help in just explaining certain things. There are a lot of reasons why abstinence is good, but this is one of the illustrations I want to do. So this is a soul and this is another soul, or rather this is a person and this is another person. This is the soul tie that is created between them. Now remember what we said about what the soul is. The soul is the mind, the soul is the emotion, and the soul is the will. I have a few boxes here. Just in case you see the brands, just know that this is not a product placement. We just didn't have better tools. So when these two souls are able to form a very close emotional capacity, a very close intellectual capacity, a very close willpower capacity, and a very close spiritual capacity, these things act as the pillars. Because when you remember that picture of the bridge that I showed you, there are 2 points that the bridge is connecting, and then there are pillars which hold the bridge down. Now, the purpose of the soul tie is to transmit data from one soul to the other. And you know, some things are heavy. Some things, when it comes to soul ties, some things are quite heavy. So this is one of the things, again, it's not a product placement, but this is one of the things, let's say, that one soul is transmitting to the other. See what I'm saying? When it comes for data to be moved from one soul to the other, because of the structures that were laid before the sexual soul tie was created, the bridge, the soul tie, is able to handle the heavy things that a couple transmit from one person to the other. Alright, so now let's remove the pillars. Let's assume you did not have enough time to create the emotional bond. You did not have time to create the intellectual capacity. You did not have time to create and form a strong willpower, and you didn't have time to form a strong spiritual bond and connection. So you didn't take time in the process of abstinence and celibacy to create the pillars that are supposed to be created. You just went ahead and jumped into creating the soul tie. So now the bridge is created, but there are no pillars holding the bridge. Let's see how this will fare on when the transmission of data begins. You see that? The soul tie literally has no capacity to sufficiently sustain or hold together the transmission of data that needs to happen between a couple and another. Because there was no time taken during celibacy or during abstinence before forming the sexual tie. Understood? That moment between, you've met this person and now here you get married and you're abstaining. This is the time that you guys need to take to form the pillars that I explained, to form the intellectual capacity, because you need to be able to connect with your spouse intellectually. You need to be able to have a very strong emotional bond between the two of you. Your willpower needs to be very well connected. And then definitely the spiritual part also needs to be in tune, because there are some things in life that are heavy and you can't just sort them out at the intellectual level. You can't just sort them out at the emotional level. You have to go deep into the spiritual level for you to deal with some of those things. So the pillar of the spiritual connection and spiritual soundness needs to be very in tune. So that when you finally create the soul tie through sexual intercourse and you begin to transmit things through that soul tie, the pillars that you put, the pillars that you laid before that happened, the pillars you laid before the sexual soul tie was formed, has the capacity to transmit some of the things that Soila and I may want to transmit as a couple. I had this friend of mine, so one day she just came and told me, Curtis, I've noticed something weird that has been happening to me. Because she was very sexually active. She would always attract these high rollers kind of guys, rich guys who have money, that sort of thing. So one day she told me that I've been in a series of relationships for this period of time. And I've noticed every time our relationship becomes sexual, within a few months, that guy's business just begins to go down. And I was like, yeah, I've been dated like 3 or 4 guys, and every time we become sexually intimate, after a few months, their business just goes down. And these are rich people, not hustlers. These are rich people. And it was, I was like, wow. I didn't know much about soul ties then. I just knew, I just used to hear soul ties. But it really blew my mind, because I was like, this is what I usually say. If it happens once, there could be nothing to it. If it happens twice, it's just a coincidence. But if it happens the third, the fourth, the fifth time, that means there is a pattern at work. There is a pattern in operation. And anywhere where there is a pattern, there is a law. There is a principle at work. There is a law that is causing that pattern to keep repeating itself. So that's just one of the ways you can be able to tell whether there is a soul tie that is operating in your life, especially when it comes to relationships.
Yeah.
You can tell there is always a pattern. Things always seem to follow a certain sequence.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what you...
That's true. I mean, I knew we mentioned about patterns in character issues, like there's anger, there's lying. So you might find yourself, like for example, we're just sharing with Curtis that how you find yourself as a woman attracted to certain guys.
Bad boys!
Yeah, like you feel like I'm only attracted to bad boys, and you can never point a finger to what exactly you like about these guys. So let's say I like this type of people, type of men. And the same way to men, they're like, I like this kind of a lady. And there's definitely that type, there's that place where you have, people as manga have a type, like there's a proper way you can have a type. Like me, I'd like a woman who thinks intellectually, a woman who's intellectual, There are those things that you look for in a lady. I'm not talking about those like literal moral things you look for in a lady or in a man. I'm talking about things that you get attracted to. Ama the things that attract you.
And they are bad for you.
And they are bad for you.
Yeah, like I know bad boys are bad for me. This guy is going to, break my heart. But for some reason, these are just the kind of guys you attract.
Yeah, or even your relationships, there's a particular point it gets to, and that's what happens. You no longer, you break up, and there's a breaking up is your relationship end a certain way.
All of them,
they end in a certain way. Whether for a man or whether for a woman, they all end in a certain way. So these are kind of patterns that you will see that are caused by certain soul ties that you've inherited generationally.
Or even you've caused
because
you
of the
picked up somewhere.
Yes, this is it. You, from the first relationship, you interacted sexually, you picked up some things, and then you ended up that relationship in a bad way. The second relationship you walk into, remember you're carrying something from the first relationship.
Yeah.
And then you end up breaking up with that person the same way you broke up with the first person, because there's some aspects of the other person you picked up that it's just so natural for you to break up with this person
in that way.
There
are patterns that are really obvious. They are so obvious. Like you can tell for the past 3 or 4 relationships you've had, you can almost predict now how relationships are going to go. You'll get into this relationship, you'll be okay for the first 6 months. It's going to be, rainbows and butterflies. From 6 months to the rest of the year, you guys are just fighting. There's mistrust. There's all these things. Before the year is over, you've broken up. You stay for 6 months, you get another relationship. Same script. You can almost predict this is how it's going to go. And I'm not talking about self-fulfilling prophecy where you are the one who is making those things happen. It's just like life just sets you up for that kind of scenario. Yeah,
these are the negative patterns in relationship. Another pattern that the society actually experience in society is that younger men are mostly, they are those men, or you yourself, you're mostly attracted to the older women. And Curtis mentioned there's a particular need that somebody looks for. So there's a particular need that you yearn for, that you want to be fulfilled in a way that you think that an older woman will fulfill it. Let's say there's a gap that was missing, let's say in your upbringing.
And we're not talking about 2 or 3 years kind of old.
No.
Like huge gaps.
Like your mom age kinda mom age kinda gap. Or in your first relationship, you first had a relationship with an older woman. And then from there,
from that point on,
it's always
you can't stand your age mates.
You can't stand your age mates. Exactly. You say, my age mates are babies, or they behave in a certain way. The same way for women. The first time relationship you had was with this old. The first time you have a relationship with a married man, you're like, this is it. I like how married men treat me. And from there henceforth, you just want to have a relationship with married men.
Even when you meet your age mate who is actually good and they are mature.
Proper,
you just don't feel them.
You can't see it. Literally, you feel disconnected because there's a soul tie that was already created with that married man. And it yearns to be fed. And that's why you'd find yourself walking into another married man's relationship and you want to relate to them because you like how they make you feel. It's just a certain, I mean, these things go deeper than just soul ties created because of relationship.
Yeah.
There's also a bringing aspect of
Yeah.
these things.
Yeah.
But right now we're just focusing on soul ties. So
stay tuned for that.
bye.
See ya, guys. We didn't even bump the clock.
It's okay.
The whole thing is the clock.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.